I've had two moments in my life when everything changed. One was when I met someone I deeply admired. The other was when I began my life in a wheelchair. The first time I met the person I admired was when I was in junior high. An alumnus of my junior high, who happened to be the CEO of a certain company, came to give a talk during a school event. That day, my life took a turn. Up until then, I really didn't want to become an adult. I think it's because I always saw folks boarding packed trains, looking all gloomy on their way to work. I just didn't want to grow up. But the CEO seemed so full of life that for the first time, I wanted to grow up fast. I dreamed of studying hard and eventually working at CEO Aaron's company. That was the first real dream I had. I wasn't particularly good at studying, but I convinced my folks to send me to a tutoring center, and I got into the best college prep high school in the county. I even managed to get into a pretty renowned university. When it came time to look for a job, although my school provided seminars and internships where we could learn about various companies, my heart never wavered. The company didn't post any job openings at my school, so I took the initiative. I called them up, shared my enthusiasm, and somehow landed an interview. During the actual interview, the CEO was present, and that was the first time I got to speak with the person I had admired for so long. When I mentioned how I had looked up to him since his talk at my junior high, he said he was truly touched. Before, I had only watched him from afar on the stage, but speaking with him directly, I felt even more that he was a wonderful person. And guess what? I actually got the job at the company I'd admired for so long. The CEO himself called to give me the good news, and I have to admit, I broke down in tears of joy. It was a moment I had dreamt of for so long. Even after that, the CEO would always make time to chat with low-level employees like me, and he'd greet me whenever he saw me around the office. My initial goal was just to work under the CEO, but now, my new goal is to become someone like him. Having a goal in life truly makes it fulfilling, and I felt so alive during those times. However, those hopeful days would come to an unexpected end. It happened during my second year with the company. We were set to have a launch event for a new app we developed, and I was helping set up the venue the day before. Technically, we could have outsourced tasks like signage and event decorations, but this time we decided to do everything in-house. It felt a lot like preparing for a school festival. I believe that doing things this way brings more heart to the event and strengthens the bond between colleagues. I really admired this approach of our CEO.
Hey Lucia, is this a good spot for the sign?
The one who asked was Sana, the daughter of the CEO I respected so much. She and I were the same age and had joined the company the previous spring. In a way, she was my only coworker from that hiring batch. Yes, it looks perfect. Even though she's the CEO's daughter, Sana was always down to earth. She would handle the same mundane tasks as a regular employee like me, all with a smile. I always thought she had a personality just like her father's.
I told you, you can use informal language with me.
Oh, sorry, but knowing she's the CEO's daughter, I'd always inadvertently revert to formal speech. This sign-making task was a bit of a change of pace for me. Up until now, I had mostly followed orders from my superiors, but this was the first task where I took the lead. Back in high school, I was part of the art club, which likely played a part in the CEO's decision to appoint me as the team leader. Taking charge and leading people, especially those senior to me, was nerve-wracking. However, the sense of achievement and fulfillment I felt was immense. A large sign meant for the entrance was delivered by a truck. Many gave detailed instructions regarding its placement, and Sana, along with 3 first-year juniors, assisted in setting it up. During that time, the CEO appeared, remarking, "Well, that's one impressive sign." He had come by several times during the work and even lent a hand, but this was the first time he had seen the completed sign. "Thank you, sir." Being complimented by the CEO felt great. He added, "You really have a knack for art, Lucia. I'm glad I asked you to handle this." I humbly replied, I couldn't have done it without everyone's help. While I couldn't entirely credit myself, I was deeply grateful that the CEO had entrusted me with the task. "I believe your character played a significant role in guiding everyone. I have high hopes for you." With that, the CEO gave me a reassuring pat on the shoulder. Of course, the CEO doesn't play favorites with just me. He always takes the time to check in on each and every employee like this. However, he doesn't say such things to everyone. It's his attentive care that really comes through, which is why he's so respected by the staff. Well, I'm off to set up the reception area. Take care.
And I'll also.
As I was about to part ways with the CEO in front of the signboard we all worked so hard on, something caught my attention. I had a feeling that it got a bit darker, and when I looked up, I realized the newly installed signboard was tipping over towards us. I had said the preparations felt like setting up for a school carnival, but the materials we used were definitely not just plywood. It was made of solid wood and was quite heavy. It's obvious how dangerous a falling sign could be. Watch out! I quickly moved out of the way, but a few seconds later, I felt a massive impact. Next thing I knew, I was waking up in a hospital bed.
Lucia.
When I opened my eyes, Santa was there, tears streaming down her face. As I tried to process what was happening, my parents soon entered the room. After listening to Santa, my family, and the doctor, I began to understand the gravity of the situation. The signboard we thought was securely installed had been poorly anchored and fell right on top of the CEO and me. According to Santa, I instinctively protected the CEO in the nick of time. Despite my efforts, both of us got pinned underneath, and Santa had called an ambulance, bringing us here.
It all happened so fast, and I barely remember anything. I was nearby, and I'm so sorry I couldn't do anything.
Santa said, her tears flowing even more. But at that moment, I didn't fully grasp why she was so distraught. There were two reasons behind her tears, and I would soon learn about both. The first reason was about my condition. Due to the impact on my back and legs, I suffered lingering effects on my lower body. The doctor said that with persistent rehabilitation, I wouldn't be completely immobile, but walking freely as I used to would be a challenge. In other words, the doctors informed me that I'd be confined to a wheelchair. I had always taken for granted that I could freely move my legs. Never in my wildest dreams did I think there'd come a day when I couldn't. When I heard the news, I was understandably in shock. I couldn't immediately accept my new reality, and the despair I felt for the future was overwhelming. The thought of not being able to achieve my dream of becoming like the CEO was devastating. However, a harsher reality would soon overshadow these feelings. This was the second reason Santa had been crying. The CEO was unconscious. I only learned of this the day after the doctor updated me about my condition. I was so caught up in my own world that I just assumed the CEO was okay. But when I thought about it, if the CEO had been fine, he would have surely come to visit me in my hospital room. That's the kind of person he is. The fact that he hadn't visited meant something was seriously amiss, something I should have realized sooner.
Thanks to you, Lucia, my father was saved from the direct impact of the falling signboard. However, when he fell, he hit his head hard on the ground, and it seems to have affected his brain.
Hearing Santa's words, my mind went blank. Up until that moment, he had always been there, impeccably dressed in his suit, always bright, always offering warm words. The thought that he was now unconscious, and there was no telling when or if he'd wake up, was unbearable. Walking as usual, and having the CEO alive and well, I'd always taken both for granted. The idea of losing the man I so admired had never once crossed my mind. And to make matters worse, it was due to the signboard I had set up and the impact I took while shielding him that he had hit his head. Realizing this fact, I felt a guilt that was just as heavy, if not heavier, than the sorrow of losing the use of my legs. Either way, returning to work immediately wasn't an option. I was set for 2 months of rehab. Everything was unfamiliar at first. While I slowly adjusted to life in the hospital, the CEO remained in a deep sleep. About 6 months after the accident, I finally made my return to work. However, since my legs hadn't fully recovered, I had to commute in a wheelchair. My first day back to work in a wheelchair was truly challenging. I had researched routes without stairs, but along the way, I encountered curbs and bumps I hadn't paid attention to before, making it difficult to proceed. I needed assistance boarding the train, and in the office, my wheelchair took up extra space. I couldn't shake the feeling of being under scrutinizing gaze. But finally, I made it to the office building. This office, which I used to love visiting and which always seemed so vibrant and hopeful, now seemed different. The same building appeared larger and more daunting, resembling the intimidating world I remembered from my childhood, darker and somewhat faded. As I entered, I saw Santa, looking concerned.
Lucia, long time no see.
Though she said that, Santa had visited me almost daily during my hospitalization. Sure, the CEO was in the same hospital, but I always thought she was such a sweetheart. It's been a while. She was pleased to see me back and showed me to a spacious desk area especially designed for my wheelchair. What's this?
Nice, right? We all got together and set this up just for you, Lucia.
Really? Thank you so much. It seems very comfortable. Seeing this, my colleagues around me gave me words of encouragement, saying things like welcome back, and it must have been tough, accompanied by applause. Those sentiments meant a lot, and I felt motivated to face my job with renewed determination. However, deep down, I felt an empty void in my heart. Simultaneously, a nagging thought consumed me. It's my fault that the CEO is in this condition. When I actually got back to work, things were tougher than I'd imagined. Mobility issues, slower movement speed, and many more challenges that I hadn't anticipated made me feel incredibly frustrated. I was never the fastest worker to begin with, but now I felt painfully aware that my pace had slowed down considerably. The constant feeling that I was being a burden weighed on me, making it harder and harder to focus on my tasks. Amidst these challenges, what further tormented me was the presence of a top-performing employee named Martin. He was 2 years older than me and had experience in the same field. He graduated from a prestigious university and was both competent and adept at his job. He had joined the company while I was hospitalized after that accident. Though he had a relatively short tenure, he had already become an indispensable figure, trusted by all the employees. But, probably because of his excellence, my slow work pace seemed to irritate him. I felt the intensity of his scrutiny growing day by day.
Lucia, you're still not done with that task.
The work assigned to me in the morning remained unfinished by noon. It was a simple task of copying the required documents and compiling them. Yet, because of the wheelchair, every little movement took longer than expected, making my pace astonishingly slow. But maybe that's just an excuse. Maybe I truly wasn't immersing myself in the job. The passion and drive I once had for my work seemed to have vanished entirely. I loathed this version of myself, and my situation only worsened each passing day. Then, one fateful day, I messed up. I couldn't finish a task with a set deadline. I intended to stay overnight at the office to get the job done, but if it's not completed, that means nothing. When Martin came in the next morning, his emotions were more evident than ever before.
Get it together. Do you realize you're dragging everyone down? If you can't even finish this small task, you're just in the way. Maybe you should just quit.
I'm sorry.
This is a job. Just saying sorry doesn't finish the work, and this isn't something that can be easily forgiven. If you thought you couldn't do it, you should have just said so.
I couldn't gauge my work speed and couldn't judge it either. That morning, it was evident I had inconvenienced many people by needing their assistance. Indeed, just as Martin said, I felt like nothing but a hindrance. Perhaps I should quit and not keep clinging to this company. Maybe that would be better for the company I loved so much and for the CEO. That's how I felt. Then Martin said,
"What's your deal? I heard you joined this company because you looked up to the CEO, but you're not the only one. Everyone here feels inspired by the CEO, and that gives us a purpose to work hard. And wasn't it because of you that the CEO is hospitalized? Yet, you're still here, taking up space, being slow like a jinx. It's a hassle for everyone with you around. I bet coming to the office in a wheelchair is a struggle. If so, just quit and work from home or something."
He kicked my wheelchair. I couldn't retort because what Martin said was true. Probably everyone else feels the same way. I'm sorry for causing trouble. I'll resign. Even though that's all I wanted to say, it's like everyone would be happier without me. But why can't I let go? I couldn't find the words, hanging my head when I suddenly heard.
Enough is enough.
I turned around to see Santa.
Goodness, the CEO's daughter.
I thought Santa was out on a sales call today. I was shocked to see her, but she didn't stop there.
Martin, who do you think you are? You act all high and mighty, but do you even understand what you're saying? I think you're wrong.
I've never seen the always calm Santa raise her voice like this. Martin seemed taken aback, lost for words, and after a moment responded,
No, that's just sugarcoating it. This is a business. If someone's not up to the task, they need to be told. Maybe you, a young lady pampered by the CEO, wouldn't understand, but the real world isn't that forgiving. If the CEO, who's currently in a coma, saw this, he'd say the same thing. He always cared deeply for his employees, and he wouldn't tolerate anyone causing trouble for the others. When he wakes up, He's bound to say, "What on earth were you doing?"
Martin looked extremely confident, fully believing he was in the right. But Santa, with a stern face, replied,
My father would never say that. Don't pretend you know. Firstly, do you even know who this person is? Lucia saved my father's life, even at the cost of her own well-being. If not for her, who knows where my dad would be now? Martin, can you confidently say you do the same? There's no one who would make such a claim, and no one who could. I believe there's no one as considerate and committed to their work as Lucia. And I'm sure I'm not the only one who feels this way.
Tears seemed to well up in Santa's eyes. Then, from behind, another voice spoke up.
I really don't think the CEO would say something like that. Doesn't the CEO always notice when we're giving our all? And it's not Lucia's fault that the CEO is in the hospital. If I had installed it properly.
The one who said this was a colleague, a year junior, from the same side team. Then, others also stood up for us, and I had to muster all my strength not to cry. Even before Mr. Martin told me all this today, I had been entirely mistaken. I thought people saw me as a burden because I couldn't move my legs. I believed it was my fault the CEO hasn't woken up. Perhaps the one tormenting me the most was my own thoughts. All my colleagues had the same warm hearts as before the accident. We're employees who look up to and admire the CEO, and the CEO sees potential in all of us. There really was no room for doubt. I had lost the future I envisioned, my role model was gone, and I lost faith in myself. I had been in despair, but I had reasons to keep going. It was Santa who made me realize that.
That's right. I just got a call from the hospital saying my father has regained consciousness.
Upon hearing Santa's words, the office erupted in joyous cheers. I thought the volume of those cheers truly reflected the deep affection everyone had for the CEO. The CEO, waking up after half a year, had a bit of difficulty moving, but thankfully, he didn't suffer any major after effects. 6 months later, he was back to leading a normal life. He wholeheartedly apologized to me for the accident that put me in a wheelchair, but to me, that no longer mattered. Wheelchair or not, I admire the CEO for his character. As long as I have this heart that believes so, I can always keep the flame of passion alive within me. That's why, even if I can't walk or face hardships, I'm still proud to be a part of this company.